vibranium doesn't belong to you!
Watch your tone, boy.
If T'Challa doesn't say boy once in this entire expansion, then it's already an instant 0 out of 10 for me. Anyways, welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very interesting discussion video relating to everyone's favorite superhero game, of course, none other than Marvel's Avengers. And if you know me well enough, or have just seen any of my previous Marvel's Avengers videos, then you should definitely know at this point that I am using that with 100% sarcasm, especially given how poor of a state Marvel's Avengers continues to be in, and just based on how many flaws I do believe the game has, simply based on its live service structure. Still, this is a AAA Marvel video game property nonetheless, which already makes me fully invested as to how exactly the game will pan out no matter what. But based on all the previous content that Crystal have incorporated within Marvel's Avengers to try and bring new life to it, like that of the Tachyon Anomaly event, the Red Room Takeover, and most recently the Cosmic Cube Villain Sector, I personally don't think they've done enough to truly revitalize the game to a state that will be financially profitable for all the developers who are working on it, and just make the players who are trying to invest time in the game more invested as to what the exact product can actually provide. Because as it seems to currently stand right now amongst the general community, it does seem like that the majority of players are simply waiting for the next massive characters to be incorporated within the Marvel's Avengers roster. And alongside of knowing that Spider-Man is going to be included within this game's roster sometime by the end of this year in 2021, likely around the time that Spider-Man No Way Home releases in December, we also know that Black Panther himself is going to be launching in the War for Wakanda expansion in August. And primarily regarding Black Panther in particular, we also got a few new pieces of information from Entertainment Weekly and a couple other of gaming journalist websites, which I am going to read off of, that do provide a better insight as to how exactly he is going to be incorporated in the game's story and exactly how long this expansion could be. So if you want to read these articles in their entirety, I will leave links to all of them in the description below. But for now, I'm mainly going to highlight two websites in particular, with that of Gizmodo and Screen Rant, that do break down some of the most important news relating to Black Panther and some very interesting viewpoints which I do extremely agree with. Now, even though it was leaked a long time ago as to who exactly is going to be portraying this character within Marvel's Avengers, it was exclusively revealed in an official manner from Entertainment Weekly that God of War's Christopher Judge both announced that he will be voicing King T'Challa in the upcoming War for Wakanda DLC, and opened up a bit about why he initially turned the gig down after being offered it. Given how many actors voiced Black Panther over the years, and the massive impact that Chadwick Boseman's performance as the character had, Judge was unsure of what he could possibly bring to the role. And it was actually his family's encouragement that ultimately pushed him to reconsider. And as Christopher Judge went on to say, to be quite honest, I was fearful of being compared to what Chadwick had so wonderfully done. The only way I could really wrap my head around it was to not even attempt a voice match, to let my performance stand on its own. I put all that into it, and hopefully people like it. So even though there's no denying that Chadwick Boseman left an incredible impact on pop culture history due to his amazing performance as Black Panther within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it does reassure me that Christopher Judge is trying to incorporate his own unique spin on the T'Challa performance within Marvel's Avengers instead of trying to mimic what has come before. Because in my opinion, that's always been something I've vividly been appreciating when it comes to these Marvel game interpretations, where all of the main characters in their standalone titles are trying to be completely different and unique in comparison to what we have seen in the past. The two standouts I'm specifically referring to are, of course, Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker and Najee Jeter as Miles Morales in the Insomniac Spider-Man franchise. Because one of the biggest flaws that I personally had with the Marvel's Avengers campaign is that it did feel like the core team at some points of the story were trying to mimic their MCU counterparts with their vocal performances. And the biggest standouts I'm trying to highlight in this case are indeed Nolan North as Tony Stark and Travis Willingham as Thor. But based on some of the few bits of dialogue we have heard from Judge in the role, I definitely think he's going to knock it out of the park. But moving on as to how long players can expect this War for Wakanda expansion to be, this is where things start to get a bit confusing. So as this was elaborated from the developers themselves, Crystal Dynamics recently told Entertainment Weekly that the War for Wakanda expansion will bring Marvel's Avengers total story length to about 25 hours. The game game has already received 2 smaller Operation add-ons, Taking Aim and Future Imperfect, which act as a continuation of the title's base Reassemble campaign. Now, while some fans misinterpreted Crystal Dynamics' statement to mean that War for Wakanda itself is 25 hours in length, the game and narrative designer of Marvel's Avengers set the record straight on Twitter, where he explained that the entirety of the Marvel's Avengers story, including the base campaign, both operations, and the upcoming War for Wakanda expansion will be roughly 25 hours total. And based on some quick maths that fans have pieced together, is that it does seem like that the overall length that War for Wakanda itself as a standalone expansion will have does range to about 7 to 10 hours. But keep in mind that one of the main reasons as to why exactly the total length might be 10 hours max is of course due to the monotonous grinding elements. Marvel's Avengers is still first and foremost a looter shooter game, and none of that is going to change in the slightest by the time that Crystal releases this expansion. So while there's surely going to be an interesting amount of story content within this expansion, including T'Challa, Shuri, Claw, and other characters that are going to interact within the wider Marvel's Avengers universe, this still doesn't detract in the slightest from what exactly this game is at surface level, which is exactly what the last paragraph of this article describes in great detail. In addition to the tensions felt between T'Challa and Shuri, Marvel's Avengers will also introduce a new riff on Ulysses Claw, who, despite his distinctly MCU appearance, also gains a corrupted vibranium form that imbues him with powers similar to those he has in the comics. With the War for Wakanda's single-player campaign comes a substantial amount of new story and world building, some of the things Marvel's Avengers has needed since its launch. But considering how troubled the road leading up to this expansion's launch is, it's hard not to see the DLC as a bittersweet last hurrah for a game that could and should have been something great. And I 110% agree. While it's fine to learn more about things like the actors' involvement and comic inspirations, I'm still extremely worried that this is pretty much going to be feeling the exact same as to what we previously experienced with the other 2 operations for Kate Bishop and Hawkeye, rather than the massive game-changing expansion that Crystal is promising this to be. And that's kind of where I currently stand for how I view Marvel's Avengers, where they can easily talk about how great this expansion is going to be all they want, but until we actually see some solid gameplay of the expansion in action and seeing how Black Panther is going to play compared to the other Avengers, I'm just not going to be getting my hopes up for this expansion or even Spider-Man's inclusion anytime soon. Now don't get me wrong, because I'm still going to be playing it the first day that they're included within the game by the time that they're releasing in August and December, but until they actually display something that looks completely different from the previous amounts of content we've seen in the past, that in turn is simply going to have my expectations be set at a rather low level. But again, I'm still keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for the best possible outcome. But with all that said, everyone, that's the video that I have for you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. How are you personally feeling about the Black Panther expansion? Are you hyped, excited, interested, or just couldn't care less by the time he's actually included? As I previously said, I am currently interested to see exactly how Black Panther will play out within this game, but if anything relating to this expansion is similar to the previous 2 operations, then my overall levels of interest are going to drop almost instantly. But until next time, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy, and without further ado, peace out.